Hi, my name is Leah, host of Take a Space podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Right before we get into the show, I would love to share with you one of the podcasts that I've been listening to recently.
Hey, this is Kate. I'm a forensic psychologist and crisis clinician, and I collect stories. Everything from true crime to trauma to parenthood. There's a lot more in common between depression and sociopathy, or between serial killers and podcasters, than you might think. Are you sure you really want to know? This is Ignorance Was Bliss at iwbpodcast.com and IWB Podcast on social media.
So, what is one thing that was a major turning point in your life?
I want to say when I turned 30.
What happened?
When I turned 30 is because that's when I realized that I wasn't living for me. It's like, and so I'll say that, so I grew up, so I'll say I like religion. So I grew up in Kojic, Church of God in Christ. And so from when I was like 8, all the way up until 30, because the 30 is like when I left the Church of God in Christ. And so 30 is when I was like, I don't think for myself. I'm like almost like a robot. And I was like, where am I like going with this? And so I'll say the initial thought came like when I was 30, but it took a few more years till I acted on it. I'll say that I started to seek out things and to try to become more in tune with myself, but I didn't kind of know what to do with it. I know that I needed to be more in tune with myself, but I was like, how do I do it? But 30 is when I came up to the initial thing, like, Lynette, do you even know yourself? And it took about 3-4 more years for me to even find out who I was, even when I had the initial thought.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. It's hard when you come to that realization, because it's easy to think about, there are things that are happening that I need to get a hold of, or things that are happening or things that are not happening that I need to make happen. But knowing the how, that is a whole different, that's a whole different, to come up with that plan. It's like, where do I start? What tools do I need? What resources do I have to reach out to? There's so much, but wow, that is interesting. Okay. All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in to another episode of Take a Space podcast. I am your host, Leah, and we are joined today by Lynette of Nice to Meet You podcast. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I appreciate you accepting the invitation. I was a little worried that you wouldn't accept it because you're on break right now, but you'll be coming back on October 11th. So people, make sure that you tune in. And if you haven't already, subscribe to her show there's on Apple Podcasts. Make sure you subscribe, leave her 5 stars because she's amazing. And then also on YouTube, it's Lynette Farmer Sowing Seeds, right?
Sowing Seeds of Love. Yes, ma'am.
Sowing Seeds of Love. Yes. Make sure. So Apple Podcasts and YouTube. Make sure you show her all the love.
Thank you.
So today we're going to talk a little bit about what your podcast is about, which is very similar to what this podcast is about. And you are like learning to become self-aware, learning to grow in love, and what your passions are, what you want to work toward. Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so like the podcast is nice to meet you. And like I was just telling Leah, you always say nice to meet you to people when you meet them. And so what I mean by that is that nice to meet you, like the actual you, like the person that's staring at you in the mirror. Because like we look in the mirror all the time, but like who is staring back at you? Do you really know? And so I created the podcast off of my time in therapy, my Alicia Keys, More Myself. I encourage you all to read that book. This is my girl. And so reading her story and being in like therapy, I was like, man, like this is good. Becoming more and more myself is like, it's making me happier and happier. So I want to share, these thoughts. Like, I don't want to keep them to myself because like, if I'm happy, I want others to be happy. And so I was, the pandemic came and I was like, man, it was so hard because like the world just shut down. Like I'm going to school to be a teacher. I'm like opening up more and smiling at people. Like I love to smile. And so when the pandemic came, I'm like, I'm in the house. I'm not able to smile. I'm not able to see people. And I was just like, this is depressing. I gotta find a way to get my smile out. I gotta find a way to connect with people. And so a person at church had asked me to like create like a short little video of like what I've been doing during the pandemic. And so I created like a 4-minute video and I shared it with people on my Facebook page, and I got like almost 200 like views, and people were talking about like how amazing it was and like how much it encouraged them. I'm like, man, this might be, I might have something with this. And so I was like, you know what? I started making YouTube videos once a week, sometimes twice a week, and I was just sharing them with people. And that was like my cousin. She was like, I'm just waiting on your podcast. And I'm like, podcast? I'm like, And so I started to think about it. I had already started like thinking about a podcast, and I'm like, she said it, I'm thinking about it, you know, why not? And so I still didn't do it. I was still like making the YouTube videos. And then I was like sitting on my couch and I was talking to another friend, and she was like, I like your podcast. She was like, your voice is so soothing and so calming. And I was like, my cousin just asked me about doing a podcast. And I was like, I thought about doing a podcast. You just said that I have a voice for a podcast. There goes my 3 people. I'm going to do a podcast. And so I just like sat, you know, looked up Google, some platforms, and I saw Anchor, and I signed up for Anchor, and that was on June 18th. And I've been doing a podcast ever since, trying to help people to become the best version of themselves. And so I did an episode because I didn't want people to think that when I say become the best version of yourself, that you should also accept yourself for who you are. Becoming the best version of yourself is becoming more aware of who you are and accepting yourself. So I was like, I wanted to clarify. I'm not saying that you have to strive for perfection, but become more aware of who you are.
Yeah, that is so true. We when we hear do better, be better, you know, or become successful, it's not in a vacuum, and it's not a monolith. Like, it's not just one way to be successful. There's not one way to be great. There's not one way to be better. And you can't look to other people. Like, I can't look to you to know who the best me is. That's where I think a lot of people fall off, is that they look to other people, to parents, to pastors, to therapists, to singers, to actors, to people who are so disconnected from them. And they say, well, you know, they have the cars, they have the house, they have the this, they have the that. I need to do that. And it's like, but you don't have the same skills that they have.
Yeah, exactly.
They don't have what you have. You don't have what they have. Like, you have exactly what you need to be great in you. And I think a lot of people get stuck in what other people tell them, especially as a child, and they never really grow out of that. And so I think that is great. Like, I know that 30 is an interesting age where it's like, oh, I'm grown out here. Like, I got bills in my name. I have debt. Like, I have a job that, like, in a career, like, I'm really out here, like, living my life. And 30 is like, there's like a light bulb that goes off. Like, I really need to get some stuff figured out. And I realize that a lot of people, some people kind of miss the boat and jump on at 35, but, you know, better late than never. Late than never. But I think that 30 is such a reflective age. And when you grow up in, and I grew up Baptist. So I grew up in Northern California, in the Bay Area, and my parents are musicians in the church, and they play everywhere. And so I know what it's like to grow up in the church. I've been to the Kojic, Pentecostal, Apostolic, AME, all of those, like, all of them. And so I know how different it can be. It was such, it wasn't jarring. I won't use the word jarring, but it was very different to go to a Kojic church, and they're just like, you have to wear a skirt, you can't wear makeup. And I wasn't even a makeup person, but even like they're just like, you know, your hair has to be pulled back or whatever. And I was like, but the worship though, right? The worship. Can we get to that part? The worship. And then I think one of the time I tried to leave at one point because they were coming down the aisle to like tell people to worship. And I'm the type of person, I'm good with clapping my hands, a good hand clap, you know, head nod, I'm good, right? Don't force me to stand up. Don't force me to do, like, no. And so I saw the lady coming down the aisle, like getting people up out of the seats, and I was just like,
out of control. Out of control. I know that all too well. I know that and so like listening to you talk, it's like and no knock on Church of God. It raised me. It made me the person that I am today, but they're so stuck on, as a whole, not each individual, as a whole in general, that rules. They make up these rules for everything, and you just, like you said, you just want to worship. You're just there for a community, because you could worship at home, but you come for the fellowship and you know, worshiping with other people. And so they're looking at you like, you know, you shouldn't have that split that high. Like you shouldn't have this, you shouldn't have that. And I'm like, you're so worried about me. Like, what about God? What about love? What about this and what about that? And they forget that sometimes. They're so wrapped up in the can, but what about the can? And that's why I feel like some people don't like the church, because they feel like you can't live. You stop living the day that you give your life to God. And I'm like, no, God wants you to prosper and be in good health. Like, he wants to give you good things. And I used to think, like, church people, you're supposed to be poor. You don't supposed to have a lot of money, because like then you get the big head and you be high and mighty, and like God doesn't like pride. And I'm like, God wants to see you blessed. And I'm like, where are these people getting, what interpretation where are you getting this from? And so, but people, I feel like people will interpret anything, not just the scripture, to mean what they want it to mean, to fit their situation. And I feel like I've experienced that for many years, and you have to know God for yourself. Please know God, know everything, read, do your research, and know things for yourself.
Yes, it's very important. Anytime I talk to anybody, like, it's always trust but verify. So even though you may be the expert on it, like, let me know where you got your resources from. Let me understand what you're reading. Let me understand the experience. And even if we can go to the same event, go do the same, like, same exact time, same exact thing, be in the same experience, but we have different perceptions of how it went. So me saying that, you know, going to this event and you going to the same event, and I say, oh, it was the worst thing ever, and you're like, no, I had an amazing time. And I mean, you could hear that. You hear that with restaurants. You hear that with churches. You hear that with different people. Like, you know, where it's like, I met her, I don't like her, and another person's like, she's amazing. You know, and it's like both experiences could be valid. It could be the same. I mean, it could be very much true on both ends. It just depends on what your perception is, what your experience is, and what your expectations are. And you mentioned therapy. And I've been in therapy as well. And I think it's just something that everybody needs to do, especially us. We need to go to therapy. Y'all, mental health is so important. But recently I've had conversations with my elders, and they have this mindset of therapy is a young person's thing. Is that something in our generation? All you need is Jesus, and that's it, right? And not just all you need is Jesus, but like one person made the comment of, you know, if God needs to tell me anything, like, he'll tell me himself, right?
Ooh,
and I said, okay, but we have community. One, that's why we go to church, right? But two, you listen to a pastor preach every Sunday, do you not? Just putting it out there, because there's some things you can miss by not, right? But then there's one of the guys on the social happy hour I was telling you about made such a good, and oh my gosh, I was like, I have to use this. Because one person was saying he was like, therapy, that's for people who who are weak. Another guy said that therapy is for people who don't have real friends in their life, and all these. There's so many misconceptions about therapy, right? But this one guy, Ron, love him. Oh my gosh, he made such the best comment ever. He said, "Okay, your mom teaches you to brush your teeth, right? She taught you to brush your teeth when you were a kid." And he was like, "Yes." And he said, "Okay, but you still go to a dentist, right? Because a dentist is trained to look for certain things that your mom doesn't know to look for."
I'm loving it already. All right.
And I was like, wait, what? Well, what? Hold on. Wait, what?
Yeah.
And he was just like, he said, there are things that, that your mom can teach you. There are things that your friends can point out, but there are things that therapists are trained to look for. And I was just like, I'm going to use it. That's
okay. So notes.
Yes, because it's like, because even when it comes to things like parenting yourself as an adult, or learning how to get through depression, learning how to avoid things that may cause anxiety, learning how to build boundaries. Those are not necessarily things that we talk about. We're semi-taught those things, but it's always, but if you grew up in a legalistic household where it's rules, or you grew up in an environment where you didn't have the opportunity to really take up any space and be who you actually are, you had to be like conformed or assimilated into whatever your environment is so that you can have a pleasant experience. Otherwise, you will be told that you are X, Y, and Z, you're difficult, you're this, or whatever. And if you don't have that experience, I mean, those who have been able to just be free and live their lives and do what you need to do, that's great. Most of you are, this podcast isn't really for you, but those people who are working on, because boundaries are a great thing, but a lot of people don't know how to build boundaries. A lot of people don't know how to know. A lot of people are about people pleasing. A lot of people are self-sabotaging and don't even know it. Don't even know where it comes from, and so, that's what it is. And so I'm talking to people. I'm like, look, if you don't even have to do therapy once a week or every 3 days. If you can go once a quarter to an unbiased person and get out all the stuff that you've been holding on to. Oh no, I'm gonna just get over it. That's not how things work.
Oh, Leah, that you said that. Oh, I hate that. If someone says to me, get over it, that just burns me up, because you don't know my experience. For you to tell me how long, to put a time limit on how long I could be in a thing, don't do that. Like, don't do that to me, because I'm not going to tell you how long you can experience the thing. So you don't tell me how long I can experience, because what we need, or what I suggest, is that we have empathy for the next person, to try to put yourself in the other person's shoes. And sometimes we're so quick to try to judge and say where that person should be. And we're okay, but flip the script. Could you walk in that person's shoes?
Right.
Could you walk a day in that person's shoes? And so lip service, like, just saying stuff. I don't know. I just feel like that's I mean, when somebody tells me to get over something, it's like you just hit me in the face. You punch me. If you could tell, if I hear you tell me to get over something, you just gonna make me mad. And so when you said that, I just had to jump in. I hate when people say that, because like with me, I say, like, my story, I'm 37 and I'll be 38 in like October 4th, I'll be 38. And so I feel like I just started living a few years ago. And so I try to compare myself or my life to different people, because I'm in school to be a teacher and I graduate in May. And so I look at the other people and they're in their 20s and I'm like, what am I doing here? And I'm like, because I know, like, sometimes my conversation is different from theirs. And even though, like, I look younger, I can fit in with them. Is that as soon as I open my mouth, they can tell that there's a difference, that I've been through something and that I'm a little bit more mature. And so if I would listen to the people, to say, like, get over it, if I would have listened to, like, when I decided to go back to school when I was 30, then, or no, I was like 32. If I would have decided to listen to them, then I would have never made that step. I would have said, you know, girl, you passed that, get over it. You're working. Why even try? And so listening to people will stunt your growth. And so even myself, I had to come to terms like a little bit ago and stop telling myself, stop being ashamed to tell people how old I was. Like I would just fit in, you know, because I said I look young. I'm like, don't ask. I'm like, people talking about ages, and I'm looking like, don't come to me and say how old are you? Because I'm like, I don't want to say that, because it's like, who wants to be, well, okay, so I struggle with being different. And so that's what Alicia Keys' book kind of helped me with, is like becoming like more myself and being happy with who I am. Because if I allow myself to hide who I truly am just to fit in, that's not what I'm called to do. I'm called to stand out. I'm called to be different. And so, yeah, I can go on and on and on. But yeah, but that telling people, you know, that it could just drive me crazy. Yeah. So, yeah.
No, but even like to your point, telling people, because you made 2 points that I want to hit on. Telling people to get over it is very dismissive. It's dismissive of what they feel, it's dismissive of where they are, and it's dismissive of everything, of their being, of everything of what they're going through, right? Oh, you just need to get over it. Well, you know, this is making me sad, which can turn into anger, which can turn into so many different things, right? You know, this is hurting me or whatever, and you just need to get over it. But there's not in very rare instances are there conversations of not just get over it, but how, you know what I mean? How do I get over this? You know, oh, you need to get over that breakup. You know, he wasn't good for you. Or, you know, get over your church hurt because you know that they're just people. Or, you know, get over losing this job or losing your home or not having or being in quarantine. Just get over it. And it's like, me as an extrovert, I'm used to being around people. I have to be around people. And when I'm not around people, I am just like going, like, these Zoom calls are driving me crazy.
Me too.
Oh, they're driving me crazy. But at least have enough empathy for the person to, instead of telling them to get over it, talk about some tools that they already have.
Yes.
A lot of times they're living in like, I don't have anything. I don't even know how I'm going to make it. Give them a how. Like, you know what? When I was going through this, you know, what really helped me was X. What really helped me was this. Because I've been told so many times, oh, just get over it. And it's like,
me too.
Okay, but how? Like when I was like, I was in church and this lady, she was like, she said, oh, you know, you got to trust God. Okay, but
famous line.
But so quick, what does that look like? Can you tell me what that? I'm doing the things. I pray the prayers. I read the scripture. I show up to church. I hug the people. What I give my tithes.
Better get those.
Like? Right. What is that? What does it look like? You know what I mean? What does that look like? And I feel like if she had, you know, explained more, because she's older, and so she's a grandmother, so she explained a little bit more, like, yeah, so what does that look like? And she's just like, you know, you gotta keep trusting. And I'm like, okay, this is one of those like elder things to say, and just like, no, I need more information. I can't go off of cliches. But the second thing you said was being different. A lot of times I have found, and this is for me, and so if this applies to anybody out there, this is not going to be an attack on your life. This is just me talking about me. For whatever reason, whenever I level up in life, whenever I get to a new thing, whenever I break into something new, I feel like I have to be like the people at that level. So it was during a debate tournament where me and my partner were the only ones out of the whole team that actually made it into out rounds. Like we made it through preliminaries into out rounds, right? And so I'm talking to my teammates like, okay, they're super excited, revved up, all this kind of stuff. So I talked to the teammates who are a level up from us, and I was like, okay, so what do I do? And one of the teammates looked at me and was like, the same thing you've been doing, because
Right.
that's
Yeah.
what got you here. And that advice really helped a lot, because I mean, in life, because we feel like we have to, like, I was thinking about this the other day. How do I, in this space of growing in self-awareness, in this space of, being better at boundaries and things like that, how do I be better? Like, who do I have to change to? And it was like, why do you feel like you need to change? You've gotten what you've gotten because of who you are.
Yeah.
And not saying that I can, be mean or whatever, but I've gotten to where I am because of who I am.
Mm-hmm. No, that's so listen, that's facts. Like, so what I say that with me, that's so true, but being who you are, sometimes you don't know who you are. And
True.
so I had to therapy help me to find out who I was, because when people would see me, they would say, there's always an uneasiness about me. And I never knew what that meant. And I'm like, when they meet me, they was like, what are you nervous about? And I was like, what I was doing is trying to be so aware of what was going on with the next person. And so when I'm around you, I'm thinking, like, I would say something and I'm always questioning, like, how did that person perceive it? How did they take it? And I'm always wasn't comfortable in myself, because, like, I would talk to someone and when they leave, I'm analyzing the conversation. Did I say this right? Did I make them feel this way? And I'm not just showing up for me. I'm like, they said what they said and they didn't care how I felt. And now I'm not saying that you shouldn't care when you say something to the next person, but you shouldn't be so uptight that you're worried about everything that you say. I'm like, man, did she take it this way? Did he take it that way? That's a stressful life to live. And
can you start reading my story? I would greatly appreciate if you could just start reading my story a little bit. We were talking about you and we were fine. You don't have to read my story.
Oh, my bad. No, but man, I was just like, what are they talking about? Like, why am I so... I found out in therapy. So I'll say that I was struggling with codependency. And Jada talks about that a lot on the Red Table Talk, and how she struggled with, like, codependency. And so I'm like, codependency, what does that mean? And when I looked it up, I thought, like, when your parent has an addiction, or you with somebody that, like, you're like enabling them, like you're enabling their addiction. It is not always that. It's like the need to be needed. It's like when I hear it, when someone says that they need help or anything with anything, I'm like, oh man, I can help, because, like, I felt like if I helped you, then you would like me or you would love me. It's like, it's all about what Lynette can do for the next person. You wouldn't just like me just for Lynette showing up. It's what I did for you. And so I was like, man, I've been diagnosed with codependency. Like, what is this big word? And so I had to, therapy has helped me kind of take the steps to overcome that.
Have you retired the cape?
I think so. It's like it might be hanging on on a thread or right there, but basically I think I've taken it off. Yeah, because I was like, it's like I was seeking out. So Leah, so say for instance, if somebody, so I'll just give an example with a friend, and so I had to get to work early in the morning, and so this person needed to get to class because this was a few years ago, and so I knew that I didn't have the time to go to that person's house and take them to class, but I struggled. I would sometimes I'm like, I'm struggling just to get ready for work because I'm so concerned that this person needs to get to class. It's more important that they get to class than I get to work on time. And so things like that. And I was like, I struggled with that. Like, I had like this car, it was a brand new car, I brought it spanking new, and I was taking this person near here, this person there, letting people borrow my car. Like, sometimes, like, I'm sitting there waiting for them. Like, I was doing all kind of stuff. And I was like, I never knew that. I thought I needed to do those things for people to like me.
And so you're doing all of that work, or you did all of that work for people to do what?
They didn't do anything. Like I said, and these people weren't even necessarily asking me to do those things. I was volunteering to do those things.
Yeah. Wow.
And so I shouldn't be, when I look at it, who am I to be mad at but myself? Or not really mad. Okay. I'll say that I wish I would have made better decisions and just allow people, or like, if you didn't accept me for me, if you only accept me for the things that I do for you, then are you really my friend? And so I had to ask myself that. And so I realized that when I stopped doing those things for a certain friend, they start asking me, why aren't you doing this? When you go to the store, why aren't you picking me up some cereal? You know my favorite cereal. Like, why aren't you? I'm like, what? They started to ask me because they were used to me when I would go to the store. I knew like the favorite things, like your favorite cereal, favorite candy, stuff like that. So me being me, I was like, oh, I can pick up this stuff for X, Y, and Z, because at the time I had a roommate. I was like, oh no, I know you like this. So when I go to the store, I would get these things. And so when I stopped, I wasn't even living with this person anymore, Leah. I had moved to my different place. And this person was asking me when I went to the store, oh, why didn't you get my favorite this? And I'm like, Lynette, you did this for so, like, what were you doing? And so it took my therapist to show me that I had a need to be needed. I was addicted to it. It was like a drug.
Good grief. I have a lot of siblings. I know I couldn't do that for anybody. I understand that there are certain things that people do just to feel like they're wanted, or feel like other people will want them around if you fulfill a need, if you fulfill something that they're looking for, right? But for me, I would think through, okay, do I want this person in my circle? Do they have something that I need, or something that we can exchange? And so, like, for instance, I really like your talk on your podcast. I really like the way that you have presenting yourself. I like your conversation. I like where you're growing. I like your growth. So partnering with you was a no-brainer because we're very similar. We are on this journey of growth. We're not doing the exact same thing, but we're still, in self-discovery, which is awesome. And so being on that path, being on that journey, getting to that point, like, it would make sense that we would have a partnership, right? But other people, it's not that deep. You know what I mean? Like, where you have coworkers, where you have other people who are, because once I start feeling like I'm being used, or feel like people are just using me for what I can bring to the table and not just my presence, then that's when I'm like, all right, I'm out. Like, I can't do it. But I do understand the idea. Like, my thing was about security. Like, I need, my need was like being a part of a group. So it's not I can do the one-on-one things like that, but I don't need to be seen, but I want to feel good about being a part of a group. And that was one thing that I had to, but that's because, like, I feel like that's because I grew up in such a big family. Like, I have 9 siblings. So yeah.
Are you the youngest, or?
No, I'm the 4th oldest.
Okay.
And so I'm one of the older ones. And I'm used to having people around me all the time. So whether I'm in school, whether I'm at work, or whether, I'm at home, I'm just used to being around a lot of people. And it's not that I don't have to be at the start of the show. I don't have to be, the leader of anything, but naturally it just happens. But I like to be a part of a group.
Yes.
And I like to have that community. And when I don't, then everything kind of feels like floating, and there's no gravity, and I don't know where to grab or anything. And so I definitely understand, like, how that really can affect you just living life.
Yes.
It's crazy to think that you said that you just started living a few years ago. So for the first, 33 years of your life, you weren't living. You were just existing.
I was surviving.
That's why, like, just a few years ago, you started living. So what are some things that you've done that you feel like, man, this is living, like, this is great?
So go back to the coaching thing with the dresses and the not wearing, like, I would not, I like when I had got saved, and for all you out there that don't know what saved is, gave your life to the Lord, like repenting of your sins and, you know, did like a 180, and you're no longer practicing sins, and, you know, God saved you. So when I got saved, like you said, like the Church of God in Christ, they don't really want women to wear pants. They say that it's because men wear pants, and so they quote the scripture and says it's becoming like you're not supposed to dress like a man. And so I threw away all my pants and stuff like that, and so I started wearing these skirts all the time. And you know how, so I'm in St. Louis and it gets cold sometimes, and so I would have to modify these outfits and try to put leggings on and socks over leggings, and it's just frustrating. Like, why are we doing this? I mean, if God gave the person intelligence to make pants because it's cold outside, then how about we just put the pants on? I mean, because back in the Bible day, everybody wore dresses. So was there male dresses and were there women dresses? Because I mean, like when I look back, Paul, Peter, they had a dress. It looked like a dress to me. I mean,
I mean, that's what they said up until like a little less than 100 years ago, or a little bit more, somewhere around 100 years ago. Like it was boys and girls wearing the same thing.
That's what I say. So like I threw away, like because in the house I wore like my jogging pants, and if I had to run out to the gas station or the store, I'm looking around like no church people. No members out there, right? Yes. And so it's just so now I have pants. I like when I got them, the friend that I was telling you about, she was like, "You're getting carried away with those pants, aren't you?" And I'm like, "What?" And I was like, "Yeah." And so I have my own. I changed my wardrobe. I changed that for 2012. So about 8 years now. So I've changed my wardrobe, and I speak my mind more. And so if I have something to say, I'm not so worried about like how you're going to receive it. I changed my music because like in Church of God in Christ, you're gonna listen to gospel 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm more comfortable. Like I listen to all kinds of music now, and so just those small things is just empowered me to know that I have a choice. Like I'm not a robot. And so God didn't make me. Now I still have a relationship with God, but I'm not religious anymore. I call myself spiritual. And so I'll say now I'm more in tune with what I want, because when I went to therapy, when I started, and so what used to get on my nerves is my therapist used to ask me, "How was your day?" And that's a simple question. "How was your day?" And I would say it was fine. And so she would never let me stop at fine. She would say, "What was fine about your day?" And I would get so frustrated, Leah, because I had no clue what was fine about my day. That was just the typical answer. It was fine. And so as she asked me more and more, I was like, oh, it really matters how my day was, because I will care so much about the next person's day that I didn't know my day mattered. I didn't even know I mattered. I never knew I was enough. I never knew that I mattered. And so what I do more today is like, at first I had to put it in my phone. So twice a day, my phone would go off and say, "Do a self check-in." And so I would have to, and now that I've taken it out of my phone because I just consciously do it, I check in and say, "How am I feeling?" every so often throughout the day, and say like, you know, check in with myself. But like just those small things is the things I didn't know. And like I told you, I'm about to be 30, and I didn't know any of these things. I didn't have skills and stuff like that. And like conflict resolution, I would run away from conflict. And every conflict is not bad, but I just felt like everything should go well, and I would never speak my mind. And so those are a few of the changes that I've done in becoming more myself. Yeah.
That is, girl, you are doing work. I am happy to hear it.
Thank you.
I'm so happy to hear it. Some people just get stuck in like 70 years old. You know, I've lived by this. I've died by this. I've been doing this since I was a kid and never questioned it. There was a period of time where I thought I should be different, but no, I'm going to stay the same, and never really come to the realization. But you're doing it. You're doing it. I mean, I always say, even the part about conflict, I always say conflict is necessary.
It is.
It is very necessary. Not all conflicts end in world war, but it's necessary. So if there's a disagreement, because disagree. The way that we resolve conflict is the way that I know you perceive the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So if you feel like, oh, I said what I said, I can walk away regardless of how you feel. So you don't care about me. Cool. Got it. You know? And so but if we can sit and have a conversation about it, still respect it. I understand you respect the relationship, you respect me. But that it's interesting. And I've talked about this actually on another show where like I listened to gospel music. That was the only thing I listened to
I know about that.
I was young though when I was able to listen to like secular music.
I did when I was younger. Yeah.
Because we got a radio in our room. That's how old I am. We had a radio with like the CD changer and the cassette at the bottom. Yeah, oh my gosh, like our own boombox and all that. And so it was just like, so we were able to listen to like some secular music, radio edits, and it's just, and so when I talk to people and they call out albums from like, I think one of the albums was like the Outkast, Equimini. I was like, so that came out what, 96?
Yeah.
First of all,
yeah.
First of all, I was still in elementary school. Okay. Second of, I was listening to gospel music. Like there was like, do you know Kirk Franklin was already out? Like he was already shaking up the gospel game. Like you don't understand. There's more than just the Outkast album that happened in 96. And then I'm like looking at the list. I'm like, there's so many other things happening simultaneously. It's not just the Outkast album. But that's what happens when you talk to people from the South. They just think that it's like South is where it's at. But it's good, I think, great in fact, that we have the opportunity and the ability to know more of who we are, so that it's not going to the world. Like even when you go to therapy, it like I don't know how I've never met your therapist, but the way my therapist is, she's Christian and she doesn't tell me what to do, but the way, just like your therapist asks you questions, it makes me think about how I'm thinking and why I'm thinking this way. And it's just, well, why do you think that? Well, it is not there are not leading questions where she's forcing you into a box or forcing you to do this way. And if you meet a therapist and a therapist is doing something that you don't like, go to another therapist. It's just like dating. Like you just got to find the one that's right for you. But it's so good to be able to say, okay, well, I have something to call it now. Like there are so many people, especially in the church.
Yes.
I don't want to claim that over my life. I'm not claiming depression. I'm not claiming the anger. This is right in Jesus' name. And I'm just like, I'm on the other side. Like, so if you don't call it what it is, how can you speak to it?
Yes.
I'm not claiming it's cold. If that's what I'll say all the time, call a thing a thing. If you have a cold, you gonna lie to yourself all day with the sniffles, with a fever,
right? Facts.
I'm healed in Jesus' name, and it's like I get it. I understand that you want to claim healing. I get it, but okay. Also, we do take fluids and vitamins and all this kind of stuff. We have, our doctors, especially now, who will help you, blessed by the hands of God.
Amen.
That's what he put him here for.
Preach.
I don't want to claim this headache. Well, yeah, is your head hurt?
It's still there.
Right. Like
you might not say it, but it's still there.
Listen, you haven't slept for 3 nights because you have a migraine, but you don't want to go check it out because you healed. Listen,
ooh, now you in my neighborhood.
Right. Like I said, nah, it's cool, it's fine. No, I can't. I really can't see now. Like I can't see out my left eye. Okay, let's go to the doctor and figure out what's going on.
You got me dying over here.
Listen, I'm telling you, it's so many, but it's just like I can't passively say that something is wrong. Like even when, because they always quote the was it 2 Kings 17? The woman whose son died and she went to Elisha. And was it Elisha? I think it was Elisha. I'm maybe mixing it up, but they always preach about her on Mother's Day and how, you know, she said that it is well. And it's it will be, but you know what she has to do? She had to go get help.
Yeah, she did.
She didn't say it is well and just spoke over her the son, the body of her son, and said that it is well. She went to go get help.
She did.
She's on a horse. I think she's on a horse. I always imagine her on a horse. Anytime I hear this story, I just imagine her galloping like on a horse, and the guy's like, "Hey, are you good?" And she's like, "It is well." And just like, well. Yeah, that's my image of her. That could be completely wrong, but that is my image of her galloping on a horse, like telling people, "It is well. Don't worry about it. We're good." As she's going to go get help.
Yeah,
like the help is going to work. That's what God put everything here for, so He can help us. But yeah, no, I have to speak to it. And if I'm not good, I need to say I'm not good right now. Like I'm not good, but it will be fine.
That's it right there. Yeah. And man, you, like you said, I'm in your lane. I feel like you're in my lane. You are in my lane. But speaking of like calling a thing, so anxiety. And I think I've heard you speak about I've heard you speak about anxiety. And so I got two things, because like you were saying that a therapist is kind of like, you know, like a dating relationship where you keep trying until you find the right one. And so my initial experience with a therapist is that, so I went, because I had this incident where I anemic. And so they were testing my blood every so often to make sure that my iron was at the appropriate, my hemoglobin was at the appropriate level. And so I had gotten to an appropriate level and I stopped taking the iron pills. And so when I stopped taking them, you know how our brains are so powerful. And they'll tell us stuff that's not really real. And so my head was hurting. And so I associated my head hurting because like headaches is a sign of like, you know, low hemoglobin also. So I'm like, I know I didn't just stop taking these iron pills and all of a sudden it dropped. And I'm like, see, unrealistically, my brain told me it's been like 2 days. 2 days since I haven't taken iron pills. And my brain told me that, girl, your iron dropped. You need to be back on these iron pills. So I went to urgent care. And so I wanted them to like test me up because I'm like, why is my head keeps hurting? And so the lady at the urgent care, she did not test my blood properly. And so it came back that my potassium was abnormally high. And so she was like, I know this is probably wrong because looking at you, whatever she meant by that, looking at me, I didn't look like a person that had high potassium. I don't know what that means. And so she sent it off to the lab. And so the same blood that she messed up, because there's a certain way they have to do the test, she sent the same blood to a lab. And so they came back and said the same thing, that my potassium is extremely high. You need to stop right now. You're at work and you need to stop right now. And you need to go to the emergency room. I said, what? You just told me that you tested it. It was, even though, you know, you messed up the test. She's like, no, you need to stop what you're doing right now and go to the emergency room. So I go to the emergency room. They do all the tests and my head is still hurting, mind you, Leah. Like in spite of all this, my head is still hurting. So I'm in the ER. They're testing me for X, Y, and Z. And I tell the lady, can you just give me something for this headache? And so I'm assuming she's going to give me Tylenol or something like that. So she gives me Toradol and she puts it into my IV. And I'm like, my head is still hurting. So she said, you know what? I'm going to give you something we call a cocktail. I said, cocktail? So she's like, it's where we mix some more of the Toradol with Reglan and Benadryl. I'm like, sure, okay. She's a nurse. She knows what she's doing. So she gives me all of this. And Leah, I don't know what happened, but I was hallucinating. I said, could you take this out of me? And I started like pulling at my IV. I was screaming into the hall. And I was like, where am I? I feel like I was losing it. I was looking at the monitor. My heart rate was up to 190. It was just climbing. And I was like, what did you give me? I said, can you take it out? Can you take it out? And I'm like, she's like, no, I can't take it out. So she's trying to, the Benadryl, it was the Reglan. The Benadryl was supposed to balance out the Reglan and slow it down. And so it wasn't catching up to it. So I was hallucinating. And so all the doctors rush in and they give me a straw, telling me to blow into the straw. You have to calm down because my heart is just climbing. And so finally the Benadryl kicked in and my stepfather started singing some gospel song and it calmed me down. And I started to calm down. The Benadryl kicked in. And so went home. I drove home. I shouldn't have been driving because I'm high on all this stuff. So I'm driving home trying to focus on where I'm going. And so I'm fine until what I started doing the next day, I started Googling the side effects of Reglan and the cocktail that she gave me. And my brain started to tell me something's wrong with me. And so I struggled with anxiety for like a whole year because I thought something was wrong with me. I couldn't even eat food. I would eat stuff. My arms would get hot. My body, I would get numb. Just simply having a conversation with people, I couldn't hold a conversation. I would be so anxious. I would be just like, I can't talk to you. I can't talk to you. I would be on the way to work driving. Sometimes I would feel like I'm like, get me out of this car. I'm like, this is just too close in. I feel like I was having a stroke. I would leave work. I was back and forth between the ER. I would wake up at 3:00 in the morning and just go to the ER because I was so anxious all the time. And so I went to a therapist. My primary care physician referred me to a therapist. And so the guy she referred me to fell asleep when I was in his office. I was talking to him.
No.
Yes. And he was like this, Leah. And he's falling asleep as I'm telling him, about my story. And so I was like, I went to him 2 times. I'm like, nah, I don't need this. So long story short is that I had a bad taste in my mouth with therapy. And so I had to, in my education program, they said that we had to go to a therapist for this particular course. And so I signed back up, because I had to go. And as I went, I started to realize it's not as bad. Like it was just him. It wasn't that therapy was bad.
Right.
It was that he wasn't the right fit. And so as I started talking to her and she still helped me work through some things, I'm like, oh, therapy is really good. So I continue to go. And so that was just like my story and saying that it takes time, that you have to work at it and you have to find what therapist fits for you. And also me kind of sharing with you that the struggles, and sometimes in the Black community, it's a stigma that we don't talk about things like that. That's a white thing. Like we don't have anxiety, like talk to Jesus, like you said. But there's a shirt out there that I like that says Jesus and therapy. Yeah. You can combine the two. And so yeah.
Yeah. And that, wow. Girl.
Yeah.
I'm glad you made it.
It was a rough year, Leah. It was a whole year. And like,
I'm gonna just give you a cocktail. Like what?
Yeah, a whole year. I thought I lost it. I thought I wasn't smart anymore. I thought something she did to my brain, that I had anxiety. I could not even have conversations with people. People didn't even know what was going on. You never know what's going on with the next person, because I presented myself like I was fine. Right, but all the time I'm like, I can't talk to you because you're making me anxious. I could not even talk to people. And so now I'm better, but like anxiety is real. Anxiety is so real.
Yes. I tell people therapy is not in place of your relationship with God or whomever you see, whomever you have above you. I don't know. Other people, not everybody's a Christian, but for me, but my relationship with God is not compromised by therapy.
No,
I think that my therapist has done the work to learn how people typically function, and for us to build a relationship. I feel like God put certain people in our paths and our lives to help us, some people to teach us a lesson, some people to progress us where we need to go. But I don't think that it's a situation where we idolize our therapists or idolize our friends or our relationship with our parents. Well, if mom says it's good, if the pastor says it's good, and it's like, no, we gotta think for ourselves. We have to be able to be in that space of okay, I know this is what people have done, but what is it that I need to do?
Yes.
And I think that getting into that space takes a lot of courage, especially if you haven't lived there before.
Big facts. And I don't know about you, Leah, I struggle with control. That's why I struggle with anxiety, because I have OCD tendencies, and not in everything, but when in that hospital, I couldn't control anything. And so I lost control. And so I feel like God taught me that he's in control. That whole experience that I had, and I haven't said I've arrived and not struggling with control, but it opened my eyes to let me know that I am not in control, and that's okay. And that's why it was so hard for me, because I had to, my brain was constantly trying to figure out what happened to me. And because my brain could not figure out what she gave me and what it did to me, I said that there's something wrong and I have to find out what it is. And a whole year, it was a rough year. It was really rough. It was a learning experience. And I say to this day, I'm not as OCD-ish as I used to be, because I mean, at one point the remotes had to be in the line, things had to be in place, and when I talked about that roommate, my sister kind of brought this to light. She said that, you think about it, you don't have control of this situation, so I'm trying to control the other things that I can control. I can control the remote being in order. I can control the house being clean. But I don't know how to stop being codependent. I don't know how to stop being addicted to being needed. So for me to have some control, I have to control these things. And so, yeah, I can't say that I'm 100%. I would say that maybe between 85, 90, 95. I mean, I'm getting there. And to not always to try to be in control.
Yeah, I don't. My anxiety is not really around control. It's more around security. So, because anything could happen. And, like, no lie, when I was in that hospital, it was just like, I remember all this because it wasn't my first time in the hospital. I've been in the hospital multiple times for asthma related, whatever. Right. But the difference is I've always had my family there. Always.
Yeah. Okay.
Anytime, whether I was in the ER, doctor's office, urgent care, they were always there. I always had people who were there, and it was just like realizing that nobody's coming. Like nobody's gonna be there, and I'm in the ICU by myself. Like this is ridiculous. Like how, and so in that moment, God was really like, because all I could do was pray. It was just me by myself. My phone's dying. I didn't have like anybody really to. It was crazy because the people who said they were my friends didn't show up, but the coworkers who knew I had a dog was like, if you don't mind, I'll take your dog for you. I don't know how long you're going to be in there. They wouldn't got my dog. They never came for me, but they wouldn't got my dog. My neighbor came to the hospital to get my keys so they can let my coworkers in to get my dog so that he's not home by himself. And so they had my dog for they took care of my dog for like 2 weeks because I was in the hospital for like a week. And it was it was God just telling me like the whole time, like, I got you. You're gonna come through this. You're gonna be okay. And I was just like, but where are my people? Like and that's kind of been like my whole thing, where it's just like, no, this needs to be like you and me now. And so where like even my manager, she showed up on Thanksgiving Day with a plate. Wow. When I say, I was like, God, you be showing out. Listen, God just like this whole year I've been saying, just God just be out here doing stuff. And even though the world itself, it seems like everybody wants to put blame on 2020. I just think that events are occurring because they've been building up for like the last, thousands of years. And now it's just like coming to a head. But I think that for me, this year particularly has been great, personally speaking. And so there's been a lot of things that have been going on, but for me, 2020 has been great.
Amen.
And so, but it's all about perspective, and that's how I have to deal with my anxiety. I have to deal with my because I was depressed for a long time as well, and I was able to get through that by changing my perspective and looking at what is it that I need. And when my therapist talk about like parenting yourself as an adult,
I know about that.
That I regular, and I'm probably gonna sound a little crazy. I'm not gonna lie. I'm probably gonna sound a little crazy.
No.
I have 8-year-old me, 23-year-old me, and then a me that is like 5 or 10 years older. She won't tell me how old she is.
Okay.
But she's older and looking at it from more of a responsible, mature, like this isn't gonna matter. And I'm just like, but this not gonna matter. But then the 8-year-old me is like who I'm journeying to get back to. Like, what is it that you want? What is it that, and because sometimes I could be like mad about whatever and I have to check in with her. Why are we mad? What are we doing? What's going on?
That's facts.
Yeah, it sounds crazy, but it works.
No, it doesn't sound crazy. My therapist told me the same thing. When you become the next age, you're still all those ages that came before.
Yes.
And we don't think about that. Oh, I'm a new age. You're still those ages. They didn't go away. Those thought patterns, those things that were with you, they're still there. And they kind of show up sometimes. So no, that's not crazy.
I don't, because initially, like last year, it was just the 8-year-old. And it was me and her trying to like, I realized like I was so insecure, so depressed because I just like forgot about her and chasing after security through other people.
Yeah.
Like, and so she was like in a corner crying and I'm like, what, who are you? What's going on? And so we got to talk and I was just like, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. So now she's more vocal, which is great. Not so good all the time because she want to act out, but gotta be like, no. But then recently, like I'll say maybe like 6 months ago, the 23-year-old came into the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to now, like yesterday was when I realized, okay, I need to find out what the significance was at the age of 23. Like what happened at the age of 23 that made her pop up.
Yeah.
Because something is happening now that I feel like I have to resolve because of whatever happened at the age of 23. And so when I feel like but when I do feel like I'm out of my depths, like the older one kind of like stands in the back and she's just like, you got it. You're good. Just keep doing what you're doing. You got it.
I like that.
Oh.
Yeah. And mine is my 12-year-old. And
12, really?
Yeah, 12-year-old. And my therapist, she asked a question like that, and I can't formulate it how she said it, but I always go back to 12. And she says, why 12? And I say, because that is when I became an adult. And she says, you became an adult at 12? And I say, yeah, because at the time I was no longer, situations happen and I lived back and forth between my mom and my grandmother, and a situation happened and I went to go live with my grandmother. And so she was on a walker. She had, arthritis and she couldn't get around. And so me and my sister, she's like 21 months older than me, so almost 2 years older than me. Mm-hmm. We went to go take care of her. I was 12, in the 7th grade. And I was like taking care of her, washing her up, paying her bills, cooking food. There wasn't really time to hang out with friends and be a kid. I went outside and rode like my bikes and stuff like that, but I knew I had a responsibility to take care of my grandmother. So I'm like, I feel like my childhood, things that I'm doing now, so I'm in college now, but it's like my high school experience. Because like when I was in high school, I feel like I wasn't able to I was kind of sad because I knew the things that were going on at home and the challenges that I had. And so like now I call myself like the popular person. Like I have my group of people that they come to me and I make them laugh and they like to, talk to me and things like that. And I didn't have that in high school because I was just sad all the time. And because I knew I struggled with self-esteem and believing that I'm beautiful and things like that. And you know how kids are mean, cruel sometimes. They picked on me for certain things.
Kids
and
are a-holes,
they are. And no, that's big facts. And that's big facts. And so I think Joyce Meyer said that too, because of she got abused by her father. And she said that God gave her back her childhood when she was older. And sometimes like the silliness that I have and things that I do, it's like I try to tell myself like stop being a kid or stuff like that, but I missed out. And so like God is kind of giving it back to me. Like he said, he'll restore the years that the cankerworm and stolen from you. And so I feel like I feel like I'm getting that back now at an older age. I'm reliving those years.
That's awesome. I never thought about it that way. And like I knew the ages typically of like the ones I need to check in with, but it's just like I never thought about, reliving, this time period or reliving a point in my life that I felt like I didn't get a chance to from a positive standpoint. Because I've always talked about it from the standpoint of I'll never forget this guy who's like, there's so many people out there. Like I grew up, I think I've, because of my intelligence, I matured way too fast. So I missed out on a lot of the kid stuff. And so when I saw, and I was like, "Ooh, thank you, Lord. Whatever you're doing in his life, don't do it in mine. Thank you for letting me see this. But whatever you're doing in his life, please don't do it in mine." There was a guy who's like 40, and he was talking about, never been married, very not okay. The word is not geeky, but very buttoned up, very prudish, very tight in every sense of the word. But he's like, no, like I want a good looking 25-year-old, no kids, no, like in the church, and she has to be saved, and she has like all these things, right? I was like, have you had a girlfriend? Well, there was this one time, this one lady, maybe, but she said that we weren't really a thing. I just kept, trying to, and I was like, okay, I want you to understand something. You grew up too fast. And when you were in your 20s, you lived like you were in your 40s, or you lived like you were in your 30s. When you got to your 30s, you lived like when you were 40s. And now that you're 40, you're trying to live like in your 20s because you feel like you missed that boat. I'm not saying, and he was like, but my God, I can't. I said, God will do everything in decency and in order. But for you to have on these blinders of you having fulfilled certain, that you would have the ability to have a certain person like that. I'm not saying she's out there. I'm saying she's a unicorn, because the area that you're living in and the area that he lives in is, most people have their kids by the time they're like 22, like right out of college. And so if a woman should, grow up in the church and have a relationship and all that kind of stuff and be 25, what do you exactly offer her that she's like, yeah, I want some of this? Nothing. Okay, just think about it. Yeah. So I was like, I don't want to be that. So I get to like have this time to just be a kid. That's why I love like hanging out with my nieces and nephews, because I get to just be silly. I get to just be just so I don't have to worry about, oh, you got to be the adult, you got to be this, you got to be that. I know when to get serious, but when it's time to play, it's time to play. I love it.
I can relate to that.
Girl, it's amazing.
It is. That's probably why I go into teaching, because like my therapist asked me, she said, because this little job that I took in the meantime as I'm doing my student teaching, and she said, like, what does teaching do for me? And I kept saying, I think I kept saying external things, and she was like, internal, what does it do for you? And I was saying, like, seeing those kids' faces smile, and how kids are so pure. And like the episode that I did with the guy from Australia that I went to high school with, he said that, he made me think, because I never thought about this, how kids are so pure because they're coming from the source. They're closer to the source than we are.
Yes.
And so I never thought about that. It's like they haven't been corrupted by the things of this world. And so I think that's why I can relate to them, because like that's how I want to be. I want to be like that. I want to be like not holding grudges, like adults. And like, you do something to me and I'm not talking to you for 10 years because you did one thing to me.
Right.
And I'm like, no, I'm not. And they can be mad at you. And then in 2 seconds, they're laughing and hugging you like nothing ever happened.
Right.
And so I like the energy that kids give, because like adults, and not all adults, but I just say sometimes that we come to a point that we've been corrupted by a lot of things and thoughts, and we have all these things circulating in our heads, and kids are just living carefree And I see why God said now that he wants us to come to him as a child.
Yes.
I get it now. It makes sense
Yes.
now. And being a teacher is stressful. I'm not going to sit here and say that, oh, whoopee. Like, there's things that, that come with the stress of teaching kids, but I just love the positive energy that the kids bring, and how they say sometimes they can embarrass you with the things that they say, but some things they say make you feel so great. They just they can touch your heart and you be like, wow. And they break things down to you so simple that we try to complicate life. And they just simplify it. And so just listening to you, I get it. The energy of kids is amazing.
Oh yeah, it can't. I mean, some kids are definitely a-holes, but the kids who are not, those kids, like I just asked my I went to go visit my siblings and got to hang out with their kids, and I was just like, I talked to my niece and nephews, and I was just like, I love you, and they were like, I love you too, and I was like, I love you, and he said, yes, I know you love me, and I was like, how do you know I love you? Because you told me yesterday, and it's just like,
yeah,
and I'm like, oh, thank you for remembering me in all of your busyness. But it's just like, but having like the kids talk to you, like watching their eyes like light up with wonder and imagination, and I'm just like even my like I was talking to my sister the other day, and she was like, my nephew is like, Lord, thank you for my hands and my feet. Thank you for the golf course that we're going to have at our house. Thank you for the mansion. Thank you for all the cars that we're going to have. I mean, he is just like, I was like, yes, you better speak that into existence. Do I have a room in this house? Do I have a guest villa? I could just be in a guest villa on the side. Like, can I get a room? And he's just like, it is not like bogged down by like all the not even reality, but all the negativity that comes with just being in this world, you know what I mean? And so I cherish those relationships. I cherish those conversations with kids, and they haven't reached that puberty age where things are like emo or whatever, but they're still like, oh my gosh, this is wonderful. This is cool. Like I don't really have like, they may sweep the floor, like wash dishes or whatever, but they don't really have like true debt responsibilities where they're just like, man, this isn't impossible. But it's like, no, like anything is possible. And I love it. I love being around that kind of energy.
Me too.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on. I definitely appreciate you. Where can people find you?
So the Nice to Meet You, and it's a number 2. I just want you, don't type in the TO, type in so NICE, 2 is in the number 2, MEET, U is in the letter U. When you look it up on Apple Podcasts, I'm on Google Podcasts, Spotify. I just got on Amazon Music, so check me out there.
What?
Yeah, just got on there.
I had to act surprised, even though I just did a post about it.
No. I thank you. I appreciate you, Leah, for the love. I do. And what is Overcast, Radio Public? Am I forgetting one? Oh, Pandora. All you old school people out there, listen to Pandora. Check me out on Pandora. As Leah said, I started my YouTube channel, so it's not Nice to Meet You. It's Lynette Farmer, Sowing Seeds of Love. And there's some videos that I did just during the pandemic and just trying to uplift people. Twitter, I do not have a Twitter for my particular page. It's the Miss Farmer. So it's MSFARMER_01 if you want to hit me up on Twitter. But yeah, just come. I mean, like I said, it's just nothing but positive energy, spreading love and light. It's just helping you to be aware, to become more self-aware of the greatness. Because I always say that God has given you everything that you need. It's just up to you to tap into it. It's there. Mm-hmm. You just got to wake up and grab it.
And your Instagram? I didn't hear your Instagram.
Oh, my bad. Instagram is at, it's Nice to Meet You. So that's at NICE, 2 is in the number 2, MEET, and then U, the letter U.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. We have to do this again.
Yes, of course. And I hope when I come back in October that Leah will come on over to the Nice to Meet You podcast.
Oh, definitely. I look forward to the invite. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Take Up Space Podcast. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Take Up Space Pod. That's Take Up Space POD, and also YouTube under the Champions of Discourse YouTube. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, and just leave a comment. Let us know. Also, let us know some ways that you have grown. And what year did you feel like, or what age were you when you felt like, man, I'm grown, I'm changing. Thank you so much for tuning in. Y'all have a great one. We'll see you next Tuesday.